Hello, welcome to 5225 week 18, where this week I'm talking about my wife's favorite movies because her birthday was May 8th. And so, because it was the week of her birthday, I decided I just want to watch a bunch of movies that she loves. Now, there are some that I didn't watch that are among her favorites that I just didn't watch because we had watched them recently. We had watched While You Were Sleeping and Music and Lyrics recently. Because they're among her favorites. They're movies that we watch occasionally together. So I had actually just recently watched them, and her favorite movie, or one of her favorite movies, is a movie that we actually share as a favorite. So I didn't watch that one because I am covering my favorite movies in October. So I didn't want to double up on any movies for this. So these are the movies I watched. They are among her favorites. Each day I would be like, so what movie am I watching today? And then she'd give me a movie to watch, and then we watch it. And unless she wanted to watch it with me, which in many cases we did watch them together. But so without any further ado, I'll just move on. I will say, just as a kind of a disclaimer, I am a little bit under the weather right now, which, has happened on this show before. I will say I have 3 kids, and if you have 3 kids and don't catch the things that they catch, you're going to have to tell me in the comments how you do that, because, oh man. It also just is a reminder, with Mother's Day having just happened, that when you were a kid and your parents were taking care of you while you were sick, they were probably sick too with the thing that you had. So just remember that, and hug them a little extra tight if they're still around. But let's go on to the first movie that I watched this week, which was You've Got Mail by director Nora Ephron. Now, Nora Ephron was a director that I respected very much. She was the first person to kind of tell a young Matt, hey, it's okay to like chick flicks. And yeah, the concept of chick flicks is flawed, but as the Joker would tell us, we do live in a society, and in that society, there are sometimes some backwards ways of thinking about things, and chick flicks is one of them. But it's not a thing that I've ever really subscribed to, because at a very young age, I watched Sleepless in Seattle for the first time and fell in love with it. I loved Sleepless in Seattle. So I've always kind of been on the train for rom-coms and that kind of stuff. But I remember when You Got Mail came out in 1998, I was pretty excited because, we already had 2 other really great movies in our opinion, which Joe vs. the Volcano is also one of my wife's favorites, but we did watch that recently as well. So that's why I didn't cover it. But we had just had 2, but we had had 2 great team ups between Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and here was coming our third. If there's another one out there that I'm forgetting, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that this was our third team up from them, and I remember I really loved it back then, and going back and watching it, as today in 2025, it's not an incredible picture. It's not a masterpiece by any means. And today we might handle the story a little bit differently, because, one of our heroes is a very rich person who's putting small stores out of business. We would definitely look at that a little bit differently, but those things don't really affect me when I'm watching it, because I think a lot of it is nostalgia. I have so much nostalgia tied into this. But yeah, so I don't really have much to say on this movie, except that it's one that I still very much enjoy, and I'm glad my wife had me rewatch it because I really do like it. I've seen several versions of this story. This is another adaptation of an old play from the 1930s called Parfumerie. Other adaptations include Shop Around the Corner, the Broadway play Love Me. I've seen both of those, and You've Got Mail is probably my favorite of those, although I wouldn't say it's the best. I would say Shop Around the Corner is probably the best in terms of quality. But You've Got Mail, just because the nostalgia hit, is probably my favorite of those. I do like Love Me. I've only ever seen the production that used to be on Broadway HD with Zachary Levi, and I know we have complicated feelings about Zachary Levi these days, and I do too. But I've actually always been a fan of his, and I do enjoy his performance in that. I think he's very, very charming, and he really plays the role really, really well. You know, it sucks that people that you like have to start sucking, but it is what it is. But I am going to move on from You've Got Mail to the next one, which is also a huge nostalgia hit for me, which is The Goonies by director Richard Donner. Now, this is one that I don't remember the first time I watched it because I've been watching it basically my entire life. I've seen it so many times. I can't really be objective in my criticism of it. Which, to be fair, and look, I should have disclaimed this early on. You know, these are my wife's favorite movies. I'm not going to be looking to knock any of these down. Really, I'm not going to be looking to be super critical of any of these movies, just because I'm here to celebrate my wife's favorite movies, and so that's what I'm doing here. But this one, you won't have to worry about that for me, because this is The Goonies by Richard Donner is just a classic in my life. Like, it's been there from the beginning. Well, it came out a year after I was born, so maybe not the beginning, but it's always been one that I've absolutely loved, and it's always been close to my heart. It's fun to go back and watch some of these, especially as the actors that are in them move on to other things, or have moved on to other things. And for a long time, you know, it was Sean Astin who did a lot of stuff in the 90s, and then fell off for a little bit, and then came back big as one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings. And you know, he's still around here and there, but I always love to go back and see some of his stuff from his younger days. Josh Brolin, who until No Country for Old Men, I don't think I really knew who he was. And it wasn't until after I saw No Country for Old Men and went back and watched The Goonies that I realized, oh, that's the same person. I did never realize that. And, you know, now going back and looking back at it, it's like, oh, it's really cool to see the difference between who he was back when he was a teenager versus, you know, the very serious, very, very good actor that he has become. Ke Huy Quan obviously recently had a resurgence due to Everything Everywhere All at Once. He's in a movie this year, Love Hurts, which is not among my favorites. It's one that I didn't hate. Like, I know a lot of people really hate that movie. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. It's got three people that I absolutely love in it, and Ke Huy Quan, Ariana DeBose, and Sean Astin. A reunion for Ke Huy Quan and Sean Astin. You know, he was for me, he was Data, but to me he was always Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That was really who he was, and then he was also Data, and then now he's Ke Huy Quan, who I love and who can never ever do anything wrong, and I just want to put him in my pocket and keep him forever, because I just love him. But yeah, Goonies, again, don't have much to say about it except that I love it. Goonies never die, and neither will my love for this movie. I do wonder, I know some people who did not see this growing up and kind of only found it as adults don't love it as much as people who loved it when they were kids. And I can definitely see that. Although I do think that it is a movie that stands on its own on it by itself. I think it is. I think it is a value. Does have value outside of just nostalgia. But I do see why, as an adult, you know, today it might not work quite as well as it did for people like me as kids, and then people like me who have grown up and now still love that movie. But I'm going to move on from The Goonies to, and this is another nostalgia movie, although not, this one doesn't hit as nostalgic for me as The Goonies did, but it is one that I watched a lot. And that is The Sandlot by director David Mickey Evans. Now, this one is interesting because it, as far as when I think about why this one doesn't hit for me as well as the Goonies. Well, number one, the Goonies has always been there, as I mentioned. Sandlot, I remember when it came out, and I remember watching it. And the thing is that I was a Goonies fan, I was a Stand By Me fan, and this one kind of hit the same notes as both of those movies, not in the same way, and they aren't. It's not that they have the same plots or anything like that, but the notes that I loved about Sandlot were hit in both Goonies and Stand By Me. And so I think that for that reason, it doesn't necessarily hit at quite as well. I say hit quite as well. It makes it sound like I didn't like it. It doesn't hold me in the way that those two movies do. I do love The Sandlot. There's obviously a lot of people my age who love The Sandlot and who quote The Sandlot. Coming back to it now is really fun, and getting to see it from a different perspective. I say that as though I haven't watched it as an adult. I have. I actually have watched it within the last few years. But every time I kind of rewatch it, it I separate a little bit further from who I was when I loved it as a kid, and it's I'm able to kind of see it a little bit more objectively. And I think I still think it's a really great movie that I really love. Not everything in it has aged particularly well. Some of it is still great, and some of it works flawlessly, and where it works just as well as it did before. I have a thing about seeing people throw up. So this movie and Stand By Me, as I mentioned before, which is another note it hits, even though it's a negative note, are difficult for me. There's scenes in both of those that are very difficult for me. But luckily, I've seen both of those so many times that I know when they're coming, and I can kind of tune out for a second. But anyway, so not all of it has aged particularly well. And the glaring thing, and it's the thing that I think that the movie handles perfectly, which is that when Squints assaults Wendy Peppercorn, the movie treats it like he's a legend. And I think that's good, because back then he would have been a legend. When I was a kid, he would have been a legend. I don't think it's advocating for that, because it definitely tells him, it's clear that what he did was wrong. But it does treat it in a more heroic way than we would today, and for good reason. Today, we wouldn't treat it that way. And so when I watch it now, and I remember the first time I showed this to my kids, we got to that part and I was like, oh God, okay, guys, never ever do that. That's bad. It's assault. Like, it was like, oh God, it was one of my first experiences with having to kind of chime in, watching one of the more problematic scenes in an old favorite. But yeah, so what Squints does to Wendy Peppercorn is assault. It is not okay to do. But I appreciate when I watch it, seeing how, for better or worse, how that was viewed back then and when the movie came out. It's bad. It's bad that it was seen that way, but it does feel very true, and there is a nostalgia in that. Not a good nostalgia necessarily, but there is there is something that kind of takes you back to a different time. And not all things that take you back to a different time are good, including that kind of thing. But Squints definitely assaults Woody Peppercorn. The movie makes up for it at the end by saying that they got married and have a bunch of kids. Um, it is what it is. I don't think it ruins this movie by any means, but it is one of those things that it's one of those things in old movies where you go, oh, that's not as cool as it used. That's not cool anymore. What we're seeing here, but so yeah, The Sandlot. It's a movie that I love, as I mentioned. I am going to move on from it to my only rewatch or my only first time watch in this. I was concerned when we started when I decided to do this that I wasn't going to have a movie that I'm watching for the first time, which I promised for every episode that I could, every week that I could do that. There are some that obviously it's not going to be possible. Like when I talk about my favorite movies, it's obviously not possible that I'll have one that I've never seen. But I was concerned that I wouldn't have one that I had seen before or that I hadn't seen before. And then she brought up Seven Brides for Seven Brothers by director Stanley Donen. And I knew it's one that I knew she loved. We owned, and we had talked about watching it in the past, but I knew vaguely the plot of it, and I was like, "Oh God, I just don't want to watch what this movie is." Something that, speaking of Sandlot aging poorly in some places, there's some poor aging happening in this movie, or at least that was my perception of it. And yes, there are some problematic elements in it. But then we decided to watch it. We watched this one together. And one of our favorite things is to watch old movies and poke fun at them, or even new movies and poke fun together. We do that all the time. We're respectful of movies that, for the most part, but if a movie needs some poking fun at, we'll poke fun at it together while we're watching it together. And so we got to poke some fun at Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. What I didn't really expect, and I should have because of how much I know that she loves this movie, what I didn't expect is for this movie to be so enjoyable, so fun, so much life and energy in this movie. Is there some light human trafficking? Yes. The movie doesn't necessarily condone it though, because that is kind of the boys are fully throttled for their kidnapping of young women to marry. But and if you don't know, I'll kind of give you a rundown of it if you haven't seen it. This is one that I am going to recommend only because it's just a lot of fun, and I think the movie understands that the problematic stuff is problematic. I don't think that it's doing this. I don't think anything that happens in it that's bad they're doing with the intention of anybody thinking that it's okay to do. But so it is going to be a recommend for me. But if you don't know about Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, it's about a man who goes into town before the winter comes, and he's not able to go back for several months to find a wife, and he sees someone that he is attracted to and decides, I need to marry her today or I'm never going to see her again. And what happens then is the biggest downgrade in cinema history when he goes and shaves his beard into a salter's mustache, I guess. He convinces her to marry him. They get married. They go back. She doesn't know that he lives with his 6 brothers all in one house together. So she would be the only woman. So she gets there and he's like, all right, so here's all of your womanly duties that you're going to have to do. And she's like, no, like that's not the life that I want. I didn't know that I was going to I thought I was marrying a husband. I didn't know I was coming here to be the caretaker for 7 boys. And so later on in the movie, the brothers are all like, we want wives too. And so they go into town, and there's a really cool sequence where they're dancing with these girls, and there's these guys who are also trying to get with these girls, and it's a really great musical sequence that even if you don't watch this movie, I highly recommend looking up. But they decide those are the girls that they want, so they come back later and just kidnap them all and bring them back. Well, that doesn't sit well with the oldest brother's wife, and she locks them out of the house and basically just lives with these other girls until the weather clears up where they can all go back to their own homes. And yeah, it's, yes, as I mentioned, some light human trafficking, but it's just enjoyable as hell. I recommend it if you haven't seen it. There's some pretty good songs. There's some great dance numbers that I think that are the highlight of this movie. It's also pretty funny for the most part. A lot of parts are really funny. Some of the brothers are really well drawn characters that my wife and I both really loved. So yeah, so that's my short review of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. I'm going to move on to my next movie, which is one of the first movies that Corey is my wife, that Corey and I ever watched together, which was Guys and Dolls. We watched this early on in our relationship, kind of as a staying in date. Like, she owned the movie, and so we stayed in and we watched Guys and Dolls, and I liked it. Because I'm a big fan of musicals. I'm a big fan of musicals, and it's one that I'd never seen the stage production or anything like that. She loves this. She fell in love with Guys and Dolls because the first stage production she was ever involved in, she was behind the scenes. She did props and stuff like that. But the first stage production she was ever involved in was a high school production of Guys and Dolls. So that made her fall in love with the musical, and then she fell in love with this movie. When I first saw it, I really liked it, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, I felt like there was something off about it. And since I've since then seen the stage version, I've seen a filmed version of the stage show, and I've come back to this movie a couple times, and I've come to the conclusion that this movie's completely miscast. Not completely. It is miscast in the two lead roles. Originally, I thought, well, they should switch places, Brando and Sinatra, because one of my biggest things is like Sinatra should be playing Sky Masterson. Like that. This is silly that he's not in that role when it's clearly a role that is fit exactly for his personality. And I thought they switched roles, but the problem is, and this is a hot take on my part, this is something that I understand not a lot of people will agree with. Not a lot of people. History has shown that I am in the minority on this. And if you go watch the 1957 episode of Picture This over on the Dopeka Movie Network, I believe it's 1957, I came out publicly with my private shame, which is that I don't think that I don't think that Marlon Brando is a good actor.
Here's my dirty little secret, guys. I don't think Brando is a very good actor in general. I think that he has two great performances, in my opinion, as Vito Corleone and as in Apocalypse Now. He accidentally has a great performance in Apocalypse Now.
Actor. I think there are two exceptions. One of them is The Godfather, which is an all-time great performance. I have to give him credit for that one. The other one is Apocalypse Now, which happened by accident. It happened because he was too lazy to do the work, and he happened upon a great performance from that. Other than that, he's got some good performances. He's got some really bad performances, in my opinion. I just don't think he's a really great actor. That being said, I decided that, okay, so Sinatra would be great as Sky Masterson, but would Brando be any good as Nathan Detroit? And I don't think he would. So my casting suggestion, this movie would be perfect if Mank had cast Sinatra as Sky Masterson and then Dean Martin as Nathan Detroit, which is a much, in my opinion, better fit. I think this movie could have been perfect if that was the case. And then he cast Brando as Guy watching it in the theater later having nothing to do with this movie. And then this movie would be perfect. As it stands, I think it's a really great movie, and I love watching it. And there's some really great sequences in this movie, despite the fact that I don't always believe Brando as Sky Masterson, and I'm constantly wanting Sinatra to sing "Luck Be a Lady" and perform in that role. Regardless, it's a great movie. I loved watching it with my wife this week, and every time I've watched it with her, and it's one that she loves, and I'm glad that she introduced me to it because it's one that I love now too, despite my big small issue. But I'm going to move on from Guys and Dolls to the last movie that I watched for this, which was Fever Pitch, directed by Peter and Bobby Farrelly, Oscar winner Peter Farrelly. Now, this Fever Pitch is based on a book of the same name by Nick Hornby. I'm a fan of Nick Hornby as a writer. He's written some great books that I love that have been adapted into great movies that I love. High Fidelity is Nick Hornby. About a Boy is Nick Hornby. I'm a fan of Nick Hornby's books and the movies that come out of it. This is the second adaptation of Fever Pitch. The first one is from, I believe, 1999, I think, something like that. It's a British movie. Colin Firth plays the lead role, and it is about what the book is about, which is a person who's obsessed with soccer or football, as it's known in our mother country. I think making it about baseball and the Boston Red Sox is a good move. It makes sense to do that because the book and the original movie, it's called Fever Pitch because a pitch is where you play the game. That's what the field is called, as a pitch. And to translate it into baseball is easy because a pitch is also something in baseball. It's what they do. They throw the ball at the batter, or toward the batter, not at them most of the time. And I remember when this one came out because I'm not really into baseball anymore, but I used to be. And I was a Braves fan growing up. As I got a little bit older, I started to root for the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Braves. Those are basically my three teams. Mostly because I hated the Yankees. Sorry, Dylan. But so when they finally won the World Series, I was following that. Like, I was still kind of into baseball at the time. At least I love watching baseball highlights. It was hard for me to watch full games, but at that time I was watching the full games, and I was feeling that heartache and then joy as the heartache was suddenly turned on its head, and they went on that huge run and won the World Series. So there was an appeal for this for me on many levels. The source material, the subject matter. I have been asked not to be critical of Jimmy Fallon's performance in this movie and in general. And I reminded my wife, Corey, that criticism is not necessarily bad. Sometimes you can, saying good things about someone is also criticism. And she said, you can do that if it's good. That being said, I've opted not to talk about Jimmy Fallon, his performance. Drew Barrymore, I like her in this. She's hit or miss for me in a lot of things, but I do enjoy her in this. As far as the movie itself goes, it's fun time. I enjoy watching it. It's certainly my least favorite of these movies, but I do have a good time when I watch it. And I think that the Farrelly brothers do make some good choices in this movie, especially considering when it was filmed. I believe that when it was filmed, not knowing that they were about to win the World Series, and so it was. It's a nice. There was a nice confluence of events that happened here to make this movie just come out at the exact right time. But yeah, so it's a movie I enjoy. It's not one that I love, but it's one my wife loves, and we watched this one together as well. And watching these type of movies with her is just such a delight for me. It doesn't matter how I feel about these movies when I'm watching it with her, because it's just such a delight to enjoy something with her. And that's just the truth. I'm not saying that she doesn't watch this show. She's not going to see this. So I'm not saying this to butter her up. I'm not saying this to butter you guys up. I just have a really good time watching movies with my wife. I love watching the best movies with my wife. I love watching the worst movies with my wife, especially because the worst movies, we get to make fun of them the whole time. And so I had a really great time watching this movie with her. Is it great? No, it's not great. It's definitely not among my favorites. But I love it, if that makes sense. I love getting to watch this movie with her. But that's the last of the movies that I watched, which brings us to next week's preview. Now, next week's preview, I'm excited about, because this one is a late entry into the list, and I know I've been doing that a lot. I've been changing it up as I go, but I think it's important to make sure that I'm getting that this list is a living thing, and not just, oh, I have to do this one now. This one I just added actually 2 weeks ago, because 2 weeks ago I was doing movies about movies, and I started to watch a movie and I was like, I wonder blank. And then I kind of looked into it and I was like, this should be a theme. So I did not include that movie on the list, on the things that I watch movies about movies, because it's going onto this list. And this list is, this week, the movies that I'm going to be watching for week 19 it's The Streets of LA. Now, let me explain that. I'm going to be watching movies that are named after streets in Los Angeles. And I've gone back and forth on how strict I'm going to be on Streets of LA. If it can only be if they're named after a street, or maybe they're named after a neighborhood, or maybe they're named after I don't know, an area in Los Angeles. I think that I'm going to prioritize street names. And then if I can move on to things like Silver Lake or Miracle Mile, things that are like neighborhoods or areas, I will do that. Or maybe it's just whatever strikes my fancy at the time. Who knows? But this week it is Streets of LA. So tell me in the comments. Talk to me. What are some movies with some names that are named after streets in LA that you love? And if you have some that are named after neighborhoods in LA, put those down too, because chances are I'm going to be watching some of both. Also, what do you think about the movies that my wife loves that I watched? Do you have a spouse? What are some of the movies that your spouse loves? Talk to me in the comments. Thanks.